Hello everybody, it's Brian here with some more recent finds. I didn't count them, but these are records I picked up since the last video I made on this topic, and I can't remember when that is, so you'll just have to go along for the ride. So, yeah, there might be another one of these later this month. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to start with a record that is not essential probably for anyone, but it's a record I have seen in bins over the years and have always passed over because either the price was too much or the condition wasn't that great. But at some point you just have to give in. So I decided to give this record a forever home. It's Vital Idol from Billy Idol. And despite the title of this record, it's certainly not a greatest hits record. It's a remix record, as you may well know. You are looking at the 1987 Canadian edition, which has a different cover. The 85 version was different, as I've just said, and also depending on where you live, the track listing may well be different. But on this particular one, we have 8 remixes from Billy, starting with parts 1 and 2 of White Wedding, the so-called shotgun mix. We've got the Tommy James cover version of Moni Moni, the downtown mix, the Exterminator mix of Hot in the City, and the uptown mix of Dancing with Myself. The Below the Belt mix of Flesh for Fantasy. There's another cover version, Forced to Be a Lover, which you may know, Mother of Mercy mix. Rub-a-dub dub mix of Love Calling, and the remix fix of Catch My Fall. I've heard all of these before. I haven't played this yet, but I guess there's a point where you just sort of give in and buy things that you've been looking at for a long time. The store I bought it from had a nice round price sticker right on top of this old sticker damage, so I couldn't see that it was damaged, and then when I took the sticker off, I saw the old damage there, so irritating. Just a plain white sleeve with these chrysalis labels upside down. There's a bit of dust on here, so I have to clean that up. I'm not sure how many times I will play this record, but it's kind of a fun record if you're a Billy Idol fan, and I was back in the day, so that's kind of fun to have. So let's move on to the east coast of Canada, to Moncton, New Brunswick. And let's talk about a band that was the first Canadian band that was ever signed to the Sub Pop label out of Seattle. And that is a band called Eric's Trip. Yes, that band name is taken from the Sonic Youth track. There are some song titles. Now, they've released 3 full-length records, and then there's a number of EPs and whatnots, and they released a lot of the early stuff, self-released it on cassette. So this is an example of their very first release that was released way back in 1990 on cassette. So this is the 2023 vinyl version of Eric Tripp's debut record. So there's some text added here to put it into context. Name of the band members. You know, you probably will recognize Rick White, Julie Doiron, who has been in other things, including a solo career. And as it says, it was recorded to stereo cassette in Chris's folks' basement in Moncton, New Brunswick. I don't know if that's what this image is, but can you imagine recording something to 4-track cassette in someone's basement, releasing it as cassette? Very grungy, distorted, abrasive, kind of noisy sounding record, but very, very cool. And then remastering it to vinyl. I don't know if any fidelity has been gained by putting it on vinyl because I have never heard the cassette, but it's a funny thing to think about. It's got kind of a DIY element to the inner sleeve here with handwritten lyrics and whatnot. Pretty cool, right? And then some images of the band over the years. And this was pressed on 45 RPM, 10 tracks on this green vinyl. They've been described as Dinosaur Jr. crossed with My Bloody Valentine, which is a fairly, I would say that's a pretty accurate description of this kind of lo-fi outfit from Moncton, New Brunswick. So that was cool, and these were really cheap. This one has a bit of a split. I didn't realize that in the bin, but it was new. And pretty cool, though. And then the next year or two, I think 92, they released this thing called Warm Girl, another DIY cassette recording that they released. This is the 2019 vinyl repressing, again, remastered for vinyl. Pretty cool back cover, right? It also has 2 additional tracks, these 2 live tracks that were recorded in 1992 somewhere. I can't remember where. But both of these are the first time on vinyl, by the way. I should have said that. So really cool. I love this band. I think they have a really excellent sound. And here again we have the recording equipment. I don't know if this is the original, but it's some sort of cassette recording console. And then what looks to be someone's basement there. Pretty cool, right? This is also on pretty interesting vinyl. This is a green vinyl pressing with that image from the cover, which I really quite like. That's quite the striking cover image there on Warm Girl. So that's pretty cool. I was happy to get both of those at reasonable prices. Now let's talk about a really strange, I say strange because I've seen interviews with him, Canadian singer, songwriter, visual artist, kind of a political firebrand in a way, and that is a guy called Mendelsohn Joe, who, as you'll see here, has inverted his name. Well, sorry, I should say, I got it backwards. His name was originally Joe Mendelsohn, and later he inverted it to Mendelsohn Joe. So he, perhaps most famously, was a part of McKenna Mendelsohn Mainline, the Canadian blues rock outfit. And then he left in, I think, 75 or so, and then inverted his name from Joe Mendelsohn to Mendelsohn Joe. He has recorded something like 30 solo records, but not all of them have been released, so some are still unreleased. He died in 2023 through a process we know in Canada as MAID, that stands for Medical Assistance in Dying. So it's a process where doctors and nurses will expedite your passing through a legal process as long as you qualify. So it's like euthanasia, but you have to apply and be approved for the process. And he went through that process a couple of years ago, 2023. This was the interesting artists on here are Colin Linden on guitar. You may recognize that name, famous Canadian guitarist. Diane Hetherington sings on here in background vocals. She released one record called Diane Hetherington Rocks, and then she's had a career as an actor. Also, it was involved in some business ventures. I don't know much about her, but I think she only released one record. There he is on the back. Now, he's also known as a visual artist, so he painted, I think, all of his album covers. If you look closely, you'll see that these people have heads that look like human bums. So, famously, he once painted a portrait of former Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, I think while he was still Prime Minister, with his head as a bum, which got some attention. It was pretty funny. It seemed to me that living through the 90s in Toronto, every time I opened a newspaper, there was a letter to the editor from Mendelsohn Joe in various newspapers. He wrote a lot of letters to the editor. He had a lot of opinions about a lot of things that were always entertaining to read, very well written. Kind of an interesting fellow. I didn't say this is called Let's Party from 1981. I have a few of his records. I always pick them up if I find them. This one was under $5 and it's in really great shape. So of course I grabbed it. This is on the Boot label. So his music then is, rock with the blues influence, but also some just kind of folky sounds. So it's hard to pin him down, but very interesting record. And then in the same store at the same time, also for under $5, I grabbed this Mendelsohn Joe record called The Name of the Game Ain't Schmaltz. Some of the best of Mendelsohn Joe. Again, with a painting done by Joe, the self-proclaimed King of Humility. Pretty cool, right? Now, this one is interesting because, first of all, it has a nice, short essay by Colin Linden, who produced this record. And it contains some interesting stuff because the first track is from an unreleased album called Addicted. So I don't know who has the tapes for these, whether they'll ever see the light of day, but there's lots apparently of unreleased music. And then tracks from various records, including some from Mainline on side 2, with an image of Joe there. Really interesting guy. Kind of fascinating Canadian. And this is on Stony Plain Records. Right here. This is from 1984. So he had a lot in him after this. I think at one point he actually gave up music and worked permanently as a painter. I remember seeing it, an episode of This Hour is 22 Minutes with Rick Mercer, and I think that was the show it was on. He goes north where Mendelsohn Joe is living, and Mendelsohn Joe paints his portrait, which is kind of fun. All right, so moving on, we'll come back to Montreal, to a new wave band out of Montreal called The Box. I have the first 2 records from The Box. This one, it wasn't really high on my want list, but I knew that if I ever found it, I would buy it because it's exceedingly difficult to find on vinyl. At least I think. I failed many times to find this. So this is from 1990. It's called The Pleasure and the Pain. The first two records are really great and sort of a nice poppy new wave synth pop sound. This sort of continues that, but there's a slight change in sound, and I believe that has to do with the fact that the record label wanted them to release some really radio-friendly pop songs, which I think they already had done. They wanted to stick to their vision, so there's a bit of a tension here. So ultimately, the reviews of this record are fairly modest, not wonderful. However, some fans have called it a masterpiece, which is a little strange. I saw this band in concert years and years ago. This is their fourth record. Later on, they took a break and came back, and they started performing or recording songs that would probably be called progressive pop, maybe. There's the image there. And it's on the Alert label, which is a famous Canadian record label. I realize there's lots of Canadian stuff going on in this video, except for the Billy Idol. So the former owner decided to put their initials on the label, which I don't love, but what can you do about that? So I only know some of the tracks on here. I streamed some. I haven't played this whole thing yet, but I can see what the reviewers are saying because, you know, it does sound like they compromised on a bit of their sound, but, you know, it might grow on me. And anyway, I always wanted that record because it's exceedingly difficult to find. At least I could never find a copy. And then a related band, because they're also a new wave band out of Montreal. We got a little Montreal section going on here. This is Men Without Hats. I'm sure you all know a Men Without Hats song. This is an EP called Freeways, which has 5 tracks, 4 tracks on side A, and then Freeways takes up all of side 2. If you find the cassette version of this, you'll have 4 versions of Freeways. I've never seen that, but this is pretty cool. The store I bought it from, again, the box was under $5, believe it or not. This was under $5, and they had 2 copies. This beautiful, almost minty version, and another one that had a lot of ring wear for $15. So obviously I grabbed this one. There's that famous Men Without Hats logo. And it does have a insert in here with some credits, track listing, who plays on what tracks, who produced it, image, and then it's on the Sire record label. Upside down, also upside down. Right, so that's Montreal almost represented fully, but one more Montreal band. This is Fly Pan Am, a band I have mentioned several times because I think they're absolutely phenomenal. This is their debut record called Fly Pan Am, which I've had on compact disc since it came out, to be honest. They're, I guess you'd call them post-rock in the same way, same kind of similar style to Godspeed You Black Emperor, but more electric guitars, I would say. Again, this band's a bit shifting in its sound, but on this particular record, they deliver what I think is their best record. Here's the back from 1999 on Constellation Records. And as I've said many, many times, I'm pretty much, if it's a Constellation Records release and I don't have it, I would buy it because I think they're all phenomenal. Here's a little, what looks to be a hand-printed insert. Now, this has really fantastic songs on here, and it's hard to know which one to recommend, but years ago, I encouraged a friend of mine to listen to this song called Dans ces chevaux soixante circuits, or circuit. I don't know how you pronounce circuits in French, to be honest. And I don't think this person liked it very much, but I find it really hypnotizing. It starts kind of unassumingly, but builds into this really hypnotic, repetitive sound that I just think is absolutely phenomenal. But not everyone will like that. I think this is a great record. 2 pieces of vinyl, and one kind of unusual because this is the first record with music on both sides. And the second record in here continues the songs onto side C, which is this side. And in this side, which doesn't have any stamp or information, and has what looks to be 5 distinct tracks with grooves, those are completely silent. So if you play side 4, you're going to get nothing except perhaps some dust or clicks or surface noise if there's anything on there. So that's kind of an interesting way to do it. Instead of having an etching or whatever, it's kind of funny. All right, so let's move on to a Record Store Day release from 2022, which I wanted to buy in 2022, but didn't find it. And then Suddenly I walked into a record store and there it was in a bin for what I thought was a good price. This is Echo and the Bunnymen, B-Sides and Live, 2001 to 2005, RSD release. Previously released as a digital-only release in 2007. So this is an era of the Echo and the Bunnymen that I don't know too much about because, you know, I kind of gave up listening to them after 1989. Not gave up, I just sort of moved on to other things, which maybe I'll talk about someday. But I stopped listening to a lot of that kind of music, and then I had to catch up. So I haven't really circled back to catch up with all of their stuff. But there's the track listing. So it does have B-sides, including some songs I'm very familiar with, like Rescue, a Midwinter's remix, Ticket to Ride, which I guess is a Beatles song. I haven't played this yet. Villiers Terrace, and got a live version of Killing Moon and a live version of Lips Like Sugar. And then in here we have a sleeve that has information. The other one, and then the records are on clear vinyl. So there's two. I'll just pull one of them out because they're the same. Side A and side B. So I was very happy to find this record. I've been wanting to track it down for a long time, so that's very cool. And then in the sort of category of keeping up with MGK Boston Buffalo, he's shown this, I think, several times. This is the Simple Minds 5x5 or 5x5 Record Store Day release, again, from 2022. So these were not new, they were used, but they're in excellent shape. So Record Store Day 2022, this live Simple Minds set on 3 records. So the idea here was that they would tour with the idea of playing 5 tracks from each of their first 5 records, and then they added 5 bonus tracks. This was on compact disc, I believe, way back in 2012, but then this got the RSD treatment in 2022. And it's pretty cool, I have to say. So what we have here are 3 different records, and they're all on different colored vinyl. So record 1, blue. Record 2 is, I think it's red. Am I right here? No, white. Record 3, I think, is red. Is that right? Red. So a pretty cool set, I have to say. I'm really happy to find this. And yeah, I think it's good. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And then finally, it's a record that comes with a question. So I would like to know if anyone knows this band. I was in a thrift shop recently, and I picked up this record for $1.99. Now, usually I find total garbage in in thrift shops, and nothing even remotely good. Nothing even remotely good. However, this is a record from 2016 in very good shape, and I looked up the band, kind of in the indie rock area, and so I bought it. It's called the band's called Sherwood, and the album's called Some Things Never Leave You from 2016. I have listened to it. I wasn't blown away by it, but I have only listened to it once. But I'm just wondering if anybody knows about this band. They're from California, as far as I know. They had broken up in 2012 and reformed, I guess. I haven't even read all of this text yet, but maybe you can tell me if this is a record that is good. Like, if you like it, maybe. If you like this record, I would like to hear from you. I did read some reviews. The reviews are positive. And I will listen to it again. I'm just wanting to know what you guys think of that, if you know this band. Upside Down. Anyway, Sherwood, Some Things Never Leave You. So yeah, I'll put it on the turntable again, but I'm curious to know what you think. That is everything for today. I will see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.